Hello there, I'm John Brolly, the storyteller, and I'm here today because the Dracaena Centre have asked me to tell you a special story just for children. So this is for you, and I hope you're going to like it. It's about a little girl whose name was Doris. Yep, Doris. You don't meet many Dorises these days, but she was called Doris. And she was the sort of girl you really wanted to have around because Doris just liked making everybody happy. She'd always say something nice or do something nice for the people around you, just so it keeps them all happy. She'd always help out with the jobs, and she always looked after people when they were sad. But she wished she could make even more people happy. For example, her parents used to argue a little bit, but there's nothing Doris could do. And her brother liked football, but he took it so seriously that when it wasn't going very well, he got really grumpy. I mean, even if you walked down the street, the people at the bus stop didn't even look very happy. Doris wished there was something she could do to cheer everyone up. And that night, as she sat on her bed at home, Doris made a wish. Cross-legged on her bed, she looked up out of her window and she could see the moon. What she didn't know, it was no ordinary moon that night. Because once every now and then, the moon becomes a wishing moon. And it was one of those nights, a great big full wishing moon. And Doris said out loud, "I wish I could make everyone happy." And as she did so, the moon seemed to change colour and turn a beautiful red. And then it went back to normal. But when it did so, she felt a tingling in her fingers and in her toes. Maybe the moon was listening to Doris's wish. Well, that night she went to bed as usual. In the morning, when she woke up, at the bottom of her bed, she found this. It was a drum. What was a drum doing on the end of her bed? She had no idea at all. Maybe, just maybe, is the answer to her wish. So Doris carefully picked up the drum and began to play. And as soon as she played, something very strange started to happen. She found her head wiggling around. She found her shoulders giving a wobble. She found her whole body beginning to shake, and her toes were tapping, and she was dancing. And as soon as she stopped playing, she stopped dancing. Maybe this is a magic drum that can make people dance. And then she looked at her face in the mirror and saw she was smiling. Maybe this magic drum makes people dance and it makes them happy. She crept down the stairs, waiting to try out her new dancing drum. She peeped through the window at her mum and dad, who were in the kitchen. Dad was cooking the breakfast. He didn't look very happy. Mum was reading the news on her iPad. Oh dear. She didn't look very happy either. I know. I'll play the drum. She crept in to behind her dad just as he put the eggs and the bacon and the tomatoes and the mushrooms all into the pan. And Doris picked up her drum and began to play. And straight away, her dad began to dance. And straight away, her mum began to dance. And they both began to smile. Until Dad realised that he was dancing holding the frying pan, and the whole thing flipped up into the air, whoosh! And the eggs came down right on his head. And the yolk ran over his face. And the bacon went swirling through the air and landed right on Mum's iPad. And the mushrooms slooshed across the room and landed on top of the cat, who gave a terrible howl. Meow! And when the cat gave a howl, Mum jumped up into the air, stepped on the tomato, went sliding across the room and ended up sitting on her bottom in the mess. Doris's mum and dad turned round to Doris. They put their hands on their hips, they bent their knees and they said, "Doris!" But Doris, I'm afraid to say, did not stay. Doris picked up her drum and ran away as fast as she could. And then she ran all the way to where her brother was playing football in the cup final. And she looked at all the footballers out there. Were they smiling? No, they looked very serious indeed. Doris thought, oh, maybe I should try again. Maybe this magic drum will make everyone smile. And she stood at the edge of the football pitch where all the players were looking very serious, and she began to play her magic drum. And it wasn't long before the football players stopped playing football and began to dance. They were conquering around the football pitch. They were singing, they were dancing, and they were all smiling. Until somebody on the other team realised what was happening, got hold of the football, dribbled it through the dancing team, and scored a goal. Everyone was furious. They all turned round to Doris. They put their hands on their hips, they bent their knees, and they said, "Doris!" But Doris, I'm afraid to tell you, did not stay. Doris picked up her drum and ran quickly away. She ran and she ran and she ran until she came to the bus stop, where all the people were waiting for a bus. Some of them were reading newspapers. Some of them had their hands in their pockets. And the bus was very late. And all of them looked very grumpy indeed. Well, with grumpy folk like that, what could Doris do? She thought maybe this drum will cheer up all the people at the bus stop. So she crept up to the edge of the bus stop and she began to play her drum. And all the people at the bus stop began to wiggle and jiggle and squiggle, and they all began to dance. And it wasn't long before they were all linking arms and doing the can-can. And everyone was smiling until, who should come along? It was the bus driver. He was really late and he could see all the people. He thought, these people aren't waiting for a bus. These people are just having a dance. I'll just drive on by. Everyone missed the bus. They were all fuming. They turned round to Doris, put their hands on their hips, bent their knees and said, "Doris!" But Doris didn't stay. Doris picked up her drum and ran fast away, as fast as she could. She went all the way to school. And when she got to school, everyone was working very hard. Some people were painting with very serious faces. Some people were making clay models with very serious faces. Some people were doing very difficult sums with very serious faces. And Doris's teacher was sitting at the desk in the front, marking their books. He didn't look very happy. In fact, he looked really miserable. And he had a cold cup of coffee, which he kept taking sips of. And he kept going. What could Doris do? Should she try again to cheer everyone up? Maybe she would. She sneaked into the middle of the room, and quietly at first she began to play her magic dancing drum. And they all began to dance. The painters began to dance, the clay modelers began to dance, the sums people began to dance, and even Doris's teacher, with his cold cup of coffee, started to dance. In a strange, teachery sort of way. Well, it was brilliant because everybody was smiling. Until, the people doing the painting suddenly realised they were still holding the paintbrushes. There was paint on the walls. There was paint on the floor. There was paint all over the desks. There was paint on each other's faces. And the clay went everywhere. Some of the clay went flying into the air when they were doing particularly wiggly type of dances. There was clay all over the place. And the teacher was still holding his cold cup of coffee, and the coffee went and landed right on top of all the books that he had just this minute finished marking. He was furious. Everyone turned to Doris, put their hands on their hips, bent their knees and said, "Doris!" But Doris, I'm afraid to tell you, did not stay. Doris picked up her drum and ran away. She ran as fast as she could, all the way back home. And when she got there, who was waiting for her at her house? Doris's dad, Doris's mum, Doris's brother, all the people from Doris's brother's football team, all the people from the bus stop, and Doris's teacher, and all Doris's school friends. And none of them were smiling. In fact, they looked furious. Doris's dad put his hands on his hips and bent his knees, and in a very quiet voice he said, "Doris, come over here." Doris picked up her drum and came over. It wasn't time to run away. And she said, "Yes, Dad." And Doris's dad said, "Doris, all of these people here have come to say that they can't remember when they had so much fun as when you played your dancing drum. And they said, can you play your magic dancing drum for us every day?" And Doris said, "Well, hey! Of course I can!" And she began to play. and everyone began to dance, 'cause Doris had made everybody happy. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my dancing drum and I'm going to see who I can make happy. Why don't you make yourself a drum and do exactly the same thing? Hopefully, I'll see you another day. Bye-bye.